They're back, Bucky and Sully, Mondays and Fridays. First show will be this Friday night, September 5th, 6:30. Set your DVRs. Bucky Gleason, Jerry Sullivan from the Buffalo News. Looking forward to another great year. And now from the Buffalo News, Jay Skurski still in studio with us. A little later on, Booker Edgerson will be joining us. Jay, they bring in Kyle Orton. He is a veteran backup quarterback. Speaking of Jerry Sullivan, did a great job the other day comparing him to Fitzpatrick. EJ knows now there is somebody on the bench who the Bills, if need be, will turn to pull out a game.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, Kyle Orton is just a much different quarterback than what they had in Thad Lewis and Jeff Toole. It's a guy that has started 70 career games in the NFL, knows what it takes to win, has had some good seasons. So absolutely, this is a different set of circumstances now for EJ Manuel. This job is still his. By no stretch of the imagination do I think that Kyle Orton is going to come in and start, for example, the home opener in 2 weeks against Miami. He needs a little bit of time, excuse me, to learn the offense. But I think absolutely now, you know, one, if EJ Manuel isn't able to stay healthy, which he wasn't last year, they've got a guy that I think they can win games with. I don't think they'd thought that with, obviously they didn't with Jeff Toole and Thad Lewis. And two, not only that, if EJ Manuel does stay healthy and this team is sputtering through the first 5 or 6 games, I think then it becomes a conversation. Do you go to the bench?
Let's bring up a forgotten player, Thad Lewis. Last year, he got thrown in there with virtually no training camp. Performed relatively well, in fact, to the point where some fans were asking to keep Lewis out there as opposed to EJ. And then he comes into this camp and he got cut. I mean, he just showed nothing this year. I was so surprised at his lack of development coming off of that last season.
Yeah, it all boils down to his accuracy. He just was not accurate enough with the ball, and I think really that's what hurt him last year too. In the game, he went 2-3, beat the Dolphins twice. They were a weird team. I'm not sure what to make of that, but he came in against Cincinnati and performed pretty well. Performed well, obviously, in the wins. Anytime you can beat the Dolphins, Bills fans are going to be happy with that. But he struggled, I thought, taking care of the ball. He was a little bit inaccurate. Turnovers were not his strong suit, and we didn't see any improvement on that. And I think actually we saw a regression on that in camp, and that's why he's not here.
They're deep in running back. Of course, Fred Jackson. We're starting the Fred Jackson show next week, 7 o'clock, Monday nights. A lot of plugs on the show tonight. And Fred's coming back. Fred still has appeared not to have lost his step. But I think everybody's wondering about C.J. Spiller. Will C.J. Spiller be the player we saw 2 years ago, or the running back last year who had a high ankle sprain and really never seemed to get on track?
Well, I think the good news is that he's healthy again. And I think where they screwed up with C.J. Spiller last year is that they should have just sat him for a game or two when he first got hurt. What they tried to do was he went out there at 50 or 60 or maybe 70% and played on it for a few weeks and did some good things, but obviously wasn't 100%. And I think that lingered basically throughout the rest of the year. And they would have been better off, I think, just sitting him for 2 games, trying to get him as close to 100% as he could be, because Spiller's a player that his explosiveness and his ability to cut is what makes him his money. He needs to be able to do that, and he wasn't able to do it last year. So, him being back to 100% and the way that they've used him in training camp in terms of he's the starting running back leads me to believe that they're going to make every effort to get him involved, not just running the ball, but also I think, and this is an area that the offense needs to improve going back to Chan Gailey. They did a great job using him as a wide receiver. I think we'll see a little bit more of that this year, and I think we should see more of it using Spiller out of the backfield as a pass catcher.
Speaking of wide receiver, we really have seen nothing from Sammy Watkins in the games because, first couple of games they didn't want to play him, and then he got nicked up. What are you hearing about this rib injury, and how lingering do you think this will be?
Well, it's a rib contusion, basically bruised ribs, and for anybody who's ever had that, they can tell you that it's not easy to diagnose how long it's going to be. It's all dependent on really pain tolerance. So the good news is it sounds like he's going to be able to play, but you don't know how effective he's going to be until he actually gets out there. I think that they erred in playing him against Detroit. I think looking back on it now, the staff and the player both would have said, I shouldn't have gone. He shouldn't have gone in that game. They should have just given him the time off. So, it'll be interesting to see how much Watkins, especially the first month of the season, how he's utilized. Because one, he may not be 100%, and two, I think that you're going to see defenses, even though he's a rookie, give him a great deal of respect. They know what type of an explosive player he can be. And it wouldn't surprise me if Watkins, statistically speaking, doesn't have a real dynamite start to his career. Now that might not be the worst thing for this offense. If he's getting double covered and things like that, it should conceivably open things up for other players.
I'm really surprised nobody's asked me about this, but last year I actually bruised my rib on a roller coaster ride. And I will say, it wasn't until this summer when I was able to ride the roller coaster again. So if it has anything to do with lingering injury. Okay, Buffalo Bills. How do you see them for the 2014 season? What's your prediction on the record?
I went with 6-10 in our preview section, which ran in this Sunday's paper. I just don't see the development, especially on offense. And this is a league where you have to score points now these days. You can have a defense that gives up a lot of points if you can outscore teams. That's the way the NFL is. It's a passing-based league, and I just haven't seen enough development in the passing game. And obviously, when you say passing game, you're referring to E.J. Manuel, to expect a big leap forward. And I know we talked about it last segment. People will mention, what do you take from the preseason? I came away from the preseason worried about this offense, and I can't take them for more than 6 wins at this point.
There is a sense that the collars are getting tight on this coaching staff because they know with a new owner coming in, they could easily be replaced. If this team starts to progress as they did last year towards a 6-10 final record, I got to believe that last month of the season, it could be ugly.
I think absolutely, and I think, as you mentioned there, the pressure that's going to be on this coaching staff and this ownership, really, not ownership, but the front office, because of the impending ownership change. They've said all the right things publicly about how it hasn't affected what they've done, and to a degree, I believe that. But I think absolutely that there's a pressure, and it's felt organization-wide, and it's understandable. If I were to get a new boss, I would certainly be worried about what was going to be happening with my job.
Jay, thanks so much for coming on. We'll see you out at the games, and we'll have you back on.
Thanks, Bob.
Jay Skurski from the Buffalo News. We'll be back with Booker Edgerson right after this.